What's going on, Colts Nation? I appreciate you stopping by for another video where today I want to talk about another second-year breakout. Somebody that was injured all of last season. We didn't get a chance to really see him for anything other than the preseason and a couple snaps in the regular season, but it's going to be running back Evan Hull. We've talked about Anthony Richardson, Juju Brents, Josh Downs so far. Evan Hull's a guy that I think can actually have an impact in year two, even though he's not going to be a starter, right? Of all the guys we've talked about, he's the only non-starter of them so far. So, Evan Hull, of course, is going to be capped in what he can do, but in terms of grabbing the reins of that second string job, right, is that going to be starting the year? I expect that to be Trey Sermon with Evan Hull coming off the injury, and Trey Sermon also being in this system for an extra year because he was with Shane Steichen with the Eagles, and because he's just been in the league a little longer, right? A veteran player who's been in multiple offenses. Trey Sermon's going to start the year at second string, I would assume. But it's something to watch as we go through training camp, right? We just talked yesterday about the training camp video, and in that video we talked about Evan Hull and how he had the longest play of camp so far, where he busted through the hole in a run play and took off and nobody was able to touch him. So Evan Hull, I think, coming into this year can have some production for us, right? You look at Zach Moss leaving and the production that he had, that's almost 800 yards and 5 touchdowns just on the ground coming off the board. And then when I look at his receiving stats here, that's 27 catches, almost 200 yards, and 2 more touchdowns. So there's a lot of production that can be had out there. Now, obviously, some of that's going to go to Jonathan Taylor because he's Jonathan Taylor, and if he needs to carry the load, he can carry the load. That's what he did in 21, and it sounds like that's what everybody's expecting from him again this year. So I expect, of course, some of that to go to JT, but I think Evan Hull can provide some of that, right? You look at what he was able to do in college, where he ends up with over 2,400 yards, 22 total touchdowns. Scrimmage yards was almost 3,300, and he really didn't even play a whole lot in his freshman year. Gets into 9 games his sophomore year, then 12 games the last 2 years in college is where he really started to stand out. So, Evan Hull can do a little bit of everything. Is what that's saying. He has the yards rushing, yards passing enough to be effective both ways, which is why he got drafted for the Colts for being in that backup role, right? That's what they expected of him last season because he has that duality. He can come in, be like a Nyheim Hines, right? I think Evan Hull can have an impact for us, kind of like Nyheim did, right? But then you also have Trey Sermon, who's going to be fighting for the job. And honestly, when you look at his stats, it's not like it pops out like crazy. Like, again, we had Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss last year with Trey Sermon, 160 yards on 35 carries last year. So coming into this season, again, because he's a veteran player in the league, I would expect that he's going to have the upper hand at least. And who's going to be starting. But with the preseason starts today, right? The Hall of Fame game is later today, and then next week is when we start getting into the other preseason games. We'll see what happens as we start to get into the games. Is Evan Hull going to catch up, or is he going to be able to pull away? Does Trey Sermon have a firm grip on that second position? It's one that throughout training camp I'm definitely going to be watching, something that we talked about a couple months ago as one of the position battles that I wanted to keep an eye on. So, between that and Evan Hull making plays in practice, and then you have the receiver competition between Alec Pearson, A.D. Mitchell, and both of those guys making plays in practice. Like, there's a lot going on right now. The safety position is really up in the air right now. Ronnie Harrison's name has been tossed into that. So we'll see what happens. We're going to keep track of it, and we're going to keep talking about we have one more second-year breakout to talk about before we start talking about some of the rookies and some other things. So make sure you're subscribed, have notifications on, so you get notified anytime any of these videos come out. Of course, appreciate you stopping by for another video. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go Colts.